Hey guys, welcome to your next project. In this project we're going to be building a basic PC repair website using Node.js and Express. Now this isn't typically something you would build with Node.js, but we're going to be using some good examples for you to learn some of the important aspects of Node and Express. Alright, so we're going to be looking at routing and middleware, some of the stuff we've already worked with, but we're also going to be looking at the Express generator to generate a boilerplate application for us. We're going to be looking at the Pug template engine. We're going to be looking at the file system Node.js module, which will help us bring in a JSON file so that we can list our services on the services page from a JSON file. We're also going to be working with a module called Node Mailer, which will allow us to create a contact form, a working contact form. Alright, so that's what we'll be doing. So project topics will include the Express generator so that we can generate a boilerplate for our application. It'll also use the Express router, so we're actually going to put our routes in separate pages, unlike in the last project where we just threw it all in the app.js file. We're going to look at the Pug template engine, which has a completely different syntax than standard HTML using indentation. We're going to look at the FS module so that we can pull in data from a JSON file and put that into our services template. And we're also going to install Node Mailer, and we're going to set up a contact form. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so in this project we're going to be working with the Express generator, which will basically generate an Express boilerplate application. So we're also going to be working with Pug, which is a Node.js template engine. So we're going to talk a little bit about that before we start the project. So first off, what is a template engine? Well, template engines enable you to use static template files in your application. So rather than create a separate template layout for every single route and every page, we can use a template engine to generate our layouts. Alright, so we can pass in and we can output dynamic variables right in the template. These values are replaced at runtime. What we'll often do is fetch data from an API or database and then pass that result into the view or into the template to be parsed. Alright, now most template engines will allow variables and conditionals and loops, so we can use some form of if statement as well as being able to loop through arrays and stuff right in the template. Some popular template engines include Pug or Jade, EJS, which is embedded JavaScript, Handlebars, and Mustache. So let's look at how we implement a template engine. So first thing, it needs to be installed just like any other Node.js module. So for instance, if we were installing Pug as a individual module, we do npm install Pug. Alright, and then in our main JS file, we would have to add a little bit of middleware. First of all, tell the system where the views folder is going to be. This should look very familiar to you. Looks just like in the last project when we set our static folder. We're saying app.set views, and then we're just passing in, we're using the path module, saying path.join, and we're saying we want to use the views folder as the views folder. Okay, we could call this anything we want, templates or layouts or whatever. And then here we're setting the actual engine. In this case it's going to be Pug, but we could set this to EJS or Handlebars or any other available template engine. So we do that in the main JS file, and then within the route, when we want to actually render a template, we can say res.render, pass in the name of the template. So in this case it's index. This would be relevant to index.pug in the views folder since we're using the Pug engine. And we can pass in dynamic variables. In this case we're passing in a variable called title that has the value of express, okay, a string of express. Alright, so pretty easy. Now let's clear things up with the Pug and Jade confusion. So Pug is the current name for what used to be called Jade, and it's one of the most popular template engines for Node, and it's the default when using the Express generator. Alright, now Pug will still occupy the Jade package name, so at this time you can still essentially use Jade. There are some small changes in the syntax and in the API, but as far as I can tell, those are very minor and don't really concern anything that we'll be doing. Alright, so let's now take a look at some Pug or Jade syntax. So on the left here, we have the Pug version. On the right, we have standard HTML. Alright, now, or not standard standard HTML. Now, with Pug, instead of working with tags, HTML tags, we're working with indents. Alright, so if we take a look at this first line here, doc type HTML, that's just putting in the doc type just like we would over here in regular HTML. Then we have HTML with some parentheses. We're saying lang equals en. Over here we have an HTML tag with the lang attribute equals en. So basically they're HTML without the brackets, okay, without the greater than and less than. Now the way that we can tell the structure, so for instance, if the head is inside of the HTML, like we have here, all right, is by the indent. Okay, since this head is indented over one from where the HTML is, that means that it's inside of it. Okay, the doc type and the HTML are on the same level because there's no indent. All right, now the title is within the head tag because it's indented over from the head. Okay, because there's no way for it to wrap around it because there's no closing head tag. Okay, so we have to go by the indent. Over here in the HTML, we have indents, but that's purely presentational. Okay, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't change the structure. With Jade, the indents actually matter. All right, same thing here. We have a script tag, and then the if is going to be within the script, so we need to make sure that that's indented. Notice that the head and the body are on the same level. That's because they're not. The body is not inside the head. It comes after the head. All right, so that's what you have to remember with Pug, is that the indents really matter as far as the structure of the markup. Now, as far as attributes, those will go in parentheses, just like this HTML here. If we want to add a lang attribute, we just put it in parentheses. Now, if we want, for instance, a div with an ID, you can see this right here, this container. Notice that we don't actually put div in here, but if we just put the number sign here, it'll look at it as a div with the ID of container, and then we have the dot call. That's going to be looked at as a class of call. All right, if we look over here, this is the HTML equivalent. So ID container, class call. Now for this paragraph down here, notice we have the paragraph and then dot and then the text here. This is because we know the paragraph is going to be on more than one line. All right, because if we try and just do P and then some text and then continue it on the next line, it's going to look at that next line as a new tag. All right, so if we do P dot and then we can put it on multiple lines like that. Okay. All right, so just keep this stuff in mind as we move along and we build our project, and that's it. I'll see you in the next video. Alright guys, in this video we're going to go ahead and install the Express generator. We're also going to install Express globally. Alright, and then what we can do is generate an application, and that'll create our package.json file. It'll create our main.js file or our app.js file. It'll create some routes. It'll create a bunch of stuff. It's basically a boilerplate that we can run. Okay, so what we want to do is say npm install, and we're going to say express, and we're going to add -g. Okay, so that'll install Express globally. Now that went much quicker than yours is probably going to go because I already have it installed. Alright, next thing you want to do is install the generator. So this command right here, express generator -g. That'll install it globally. Okay, and again, that went much faster than yours will probably go. So now we can actually generate an application. So to do that, we just say express, and then the name of our app, we're going to say PC repair. Now, if we just run express PC repair, it's going to use Jade as a template engine. All right, and we actually want to use Pug. Okay, now if we look down here, we can specify --pug, and it'll add Pug engine support. Now it's a little confusing because Jade is Pug, but if we just run this, the template files will be called .jade instead of .pug. All right, at least at this time. By the time you're watching this, it may have been updated, and it may just be Pug by default. But we're just going to say --pug. Okay, and it should have generated all of these files for us. All right, so now we're going to go into cd pc repair. All right, and from here, let's do npm install, because what it did is it created the package.json file with all the dependencies. Actually, we should probably look at that. So I'm going to just add that folder as a project. Okay, so this is the structure it created, and if we look at package.json, we have the body parser, which we've used in the last video, cookie parser, which deals with cookies, debug, of course express, Morgan, which is a logger, Pug, which is the template engine we chose, and then this serve favicon. So these are the dependencies that it's going to use. All right, now notice there is not a node modules folder. That's because we haven't ran npm install yet. So these are not yet installed. So let's go ahead and do that. And now you can see that there's now a node modules folder. Okay, so it went ahead and set all that up. Now notice right here under scripts we have start, and that's set to node bin-www. So basically what this does is it gives us a different way an alternate way to start our application aside from saying node app.js. So we can go like this. We can say npm start. All right, and that'll actually start our application. And if we go to localhost 3000, we get a landing page. So Express, welcome to Express. So we now have an application running, and what I'm going to do is just go through these files. Okay, so this is the package.json file. Let's take a look at app.js. Now this is a little longer than the one that we created, a little more in depth. What we're doing is bringing in all those dependencies, all those modules. Notice they're using var. I probably would have used const, but that's fine. We'll just leave it like that. We're bringing in all those modules, including path, and then here we're including some files that are in the routes folder. So basically this application is breaking the routes up into their own, I guess their own category. So the index, and then users, which is another route that is in the routes folder. Okay, then we have our main app variable, which is set to Express. We're setting up the view engine. Okay, we looked at this in the last video. We're setting the views folder as views. We're also setting the view engine as Pug. All right, and then all this right here is all middleware. Okay, so this is the middleware for Morgan, for the logger, for the body parser, for the cookie parser, and this sets the static folder to public. Okay, we've done this before. Here we're actually setting routes. We're setting / to go to index. We're setting /users to go to users. These refer to these variables up here, which point to these files. All right, and then down here we just have some error handling. Okay, so just some more middleware for error handling. All right. All right, so now let's take a look at routes. So index.js. Now since we're using routes in a different file like this, we're using the router. So we're setting var router to express.router. Okay, and then here we have one route to / to the home page, and it's going to render the index template. Okay, just like we saw in that slide, we're calling res.render, passing in index, and then a value, a title variable with the value of express. All right, and since this is in a different file, we need to make sure we export it. Okay, you have to use this module.exports if you want to use this from another file. Users, same thing. Now notice that we have router.get to just /. We also have it to just / on index. Since we're using the router and we're using it in a separate file like this, this actually pertains to /users. Okay, that's why we get respond with a resource. We're actually calling this. if we said users/test, if we did that, we can actually set that up right here. So if we say /test, notice we didn't include the users. We'll say this is a test. Okay, if we save that, we'll have to restart the server because we didn't use nodemon. Alright, so let's stop that. Say npm start again. And now reload, and we get this as a test. Okay, so when we're using the router like this and setting it to users, then we don't need to include /users here or here. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense. Alright, now let's see. The public folder just has images, JavaScripts, and style sheets. Okay, style sheet just has that. Let's see, the binary folder, we don't need to touch that. The views folder has all of our Pug files, so there's an error.pug. If there's any kind of error, this will display. The index, this is what we see right here. Okay, now the layout is actually what is going to surround all of the other templates. This is where we want to put our HTML and head and body tags, link to the style sheet, all that stuff. Alright, and then we say block content. And then inside of our view here, we do extends layout because we want that included in the layout. And then we do block content, and then whatever we want. In this case, it's an H1 and a paragraph. Now this right here, this is a variable, and this is what we're getting from, if we go to the index route right here, okay, title. Now if we want to pass in something else, we can do that. We'll just put a comma here, and let's say name. We'll set that to John Doe, save it, and let's go back to where were we? Index.pug, and change this here to name. Change this to hello. Save it, and we get hello. Now notice that the name isn't showing. That's because we didn't restart the server. The Pug files we can change and we don't have to reload it, but since we edited the JavaScript file, we have to reload it. Alright, unless we use nodemon, which is what I think I'm going to do. So I'm going to say nodemon, reload, and we get hello John Doe. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense, and we're going to stop here, and in the next video what we're going to do is start to work on the layout. We're going to implement Bootstrap, and I'm going to show you how we can add some markup inside of Pug and use our Bootstrap classes and so on, and we'll start to create a little website. Alright, and I'm not worried about design or anything like that, layout, just something that's very basic and functional. Okay, so I will see you in the next video. Hey guys, in this video we're going to start to build the layout of this interface of this website, and it's just going to be a basic Bootstrap template. I'm not going to do anything crazy here. The point of it isn't the layout and how it looks, it's the functionality underneath. You know, to tell you the truth, you wouldn't use Express for something like this. I just want to do this to give you an example of how to work with Jade, how to work with the different files in Express, the Express generator. Alright, so we're going to go to getbootstrap.com and go ahead and download Bootstrap, which I already have, but I'll download it again. And let's open that. Okay, and then I'm going to grab, let's open up the project folder. And we want to go into public, and there's already a style sheets folder, so what I'll do is just bring over the bootstrap.css file from that. And we're not going to be using the JavaScript at all, so I'll just leave that out. And then let's go into our layout.pug, and we need to include Bootstrap. So I'm going to just copy this link here, and we'll change this to Bootstrap. Okay, save that, and let's go back and reload, and now you'll see that the text is different because Bootstrap is now included. Alright, so basically what I want to do now is get a Navbar. Okay, so let's let's see, we'll go to examples and then the starter template here, and then if we do a Control U, that'll give us the source code. And I want this navbar. Now, to tell you the truth, I'm not I don't really care for Pug that much, or Jade. A lot of people do, a lot of people like it, but I would rather actually just use regular HTML. Now, if you don't want to type out all the indentation and all that, there's actually a site to help us with that, and that is the Jade, let's see, what is it, HTML to Jade. And this will allow us to just paste in that navbar code that we just grabbed, and it'll give us the Jade or the Pug code. Okay, so we can just grab this, copy it, and let's try to just put this right in the index for now. Actually, no, we'll put it in the layout. Let's see, we want to put it above the block content. So we want to just tab over like that and then paste that in. Oh. Yeah, see, this is all messed up. Alright, so let's tab that over. Okay, the container goes in the navbar header goes in the container. Okay, these go like that. Okay, and then we'll push these over like that, and let's just get rid of that comment. So let's see if that gives us an error. We'll save it, and there we go. So now we have our navbar. Okay, now again, this really isn't something that I prefer doing, but like I said, a lot of developers really like Pug. Okay, if you don't worry about it. We're not going to use it throughout the whole course. I just want to introduce it to you now. So let's go ahead and change the project name. Let's just say we'll say PC repair. And let's see, we have a home and an about. So home, will have that go to slash. This will go to a slash about. We're also going to have a services, so let me just add that. That'll go to slash services, and then we'll have slash contact. Now if we want to make the active class dynamics, yeah, we have the highlighted if the class is active. What we can do is we can test the title that's being passed in. So for instance, we're having this title express. This is for the index route. Let's change that to home. Save that and go back to the navbar. And what we'll do is where we have this right here, let's get rid of the dot active, and we'll say class equals title if title is equal to home. Okay, I'm just using a shorthand condition here. If title is equal to home, then class will be active, else then it'll be undefined. And we'll do that for all the LIs. Okay, so this one will be about. This one will be services. This one will be contact. Okay, so notice that home is still highlighted. Now when we create our about route, then that, and we pass in the title of about, then that will be the one that's highlighted. So now what I want to do is implement the home page. Basically I just want to have a couple different columns that say, for instance, hardware problems, and then some text, software problems. Alright, and I want to use the grid system. So I'm going to go to the HTML to Jade, and let's just put in here we'll say div class row. Let's do call MD, we'll say call MD4, so it'll be a 4-column div. And let's put an H2. We'll say hardware problems. Okay, then we'll put a paragraph. And I'm just going to grab some text, some dummy text, and throw that in. Okay, you can go to lipsum.com and generate some text if you want. Alright, and then we're going to have another column. I'm just going to copy this. Paste that in 2 more times. This one will be software. Software problems, and then this last one, let's say PC tune-up. Okay, and that's all I want. So let's copy that. I mean, not that. We're going to copy this. And let's go to index.pug, and we're going to put this right here. Okay, now we'll have to indent this correctly. So we want to go over from the block content tab. That should go in there. Okay, like that. Alright, let's try that. Okay, so there's our 3 different areas. Let's go ahead and let's add a well class. Actually, we'll do this without using the converter. So we'll put a div here. Actually, we don't even need the div. We can just say ID well, and then just tab this over. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing here. That. Okay, actually this is class well, not ID, so we'll do dot well. Okay, save that. Alright, so that gives us the gray background. Let's change this H2. Let's actually make these H4s. There. Now I want to add a container around all this stuff. So in the layout, where we have the block content, let's go ahead and put dot container, and we'll tab that over. Okay, so that puts that inside of a container. Alright, now let's see. Let's do a Jumbotron area, or a showcase area. So we'll do this in the index page. Let's go above the row here. And let's see, we're going to say Jumbotron. So Jumbotron, let's tab over and do a container. Tab over, do a row. Let's do call MD7. Do an H1, we'll say computer not working. And then a paragraph. Okay, now I want this on multiple lines, so I'm going to tab over and put a pipe character. And I'm just going to grab some text real quick. Is your computer running slow or maybe not at all? Call us for a quick and easy quote. Okay, so that's the paragraph. And then underneath that, let's put another paragraph. and we're going to put a link. We'll say a.btn because it's going to have a class of btn and btn primary and also btn lg. And then for an attribute, those will go in parentheses, so we want an href, and that's just going to go nowhere for now. And the text will say learn more or read more. Okay, now let's do our 5 column. So let's see, dot call md5, and this is actually going to be an image. So we're going to say image. Okay, that obviously needs a source attribute. So we're going to say source equals images slash mouse.jpg. Okay, so we have an images folder in the public folder, at least we should. Let's see, public images, and I'm just going to grab that image. Okay, we'll paste that in, and you'll have that in your files. Make sure you save this, and let's reload. Okay, so the image isn't showing, and that's because it's not a JPEG, it's a PNG. There we go. Alright. So there's our website, and it's nothing special, but you know, it's something to work with. So let's see, we have our Jumbotron, we have our 3 areas here. Let's just add a footer. So we'll go to the layout for that, because the footer we obviously want on every page. So let's say at the bottom here, let's put an HR, horizontal rule, then we'll put a footer tag. Okay, we'll tab over, we'll put a paragraph, and let's say at copy 2017. Okay, there's our footer, which I guess we can say PC repair 2017. Okay, so I think this is a good place to stop now that we have the home page. In the next video, we'll start to work on the inner pages. Hey guys, in this video we're going to take care of our about page for our website here, and also the services page. Now for the services, I'm going to show you how we can fetch data from a JSON document. Okay, we're going to put all the services inside of a JSON document, and I'll show you how we can grab it and put it into our template and format it. Alright, so let's start with the about. Now what I'm going to do is in the routes folder, I'm going to create a new file called about.js. Okay, and we're just going to copy what we have in index.js for now. Okay, so we'll paste that in, and all we really need to change here, let's get rid of that comment, and we're going to keep the slash, because remember, since we're using the router, we don't need to do slash about here, just slash, and it'll know that it means about. Alright, and then we want to render the about template and get rid of that name, and then the title is going to be about. Okay, we'll save that, and in index.js we can get rid of that name John Doe as well. Alright, so now let's go back to app.js, and we're not going to be using users, so what I'm going to do is change that to about, and that's going to go to routes about, and then down here we're going to say /about and about. Okay, just like that. So we can save that, and now let's go into views, and we're going to create a new file here called about.pug. And all we have to do is say extends layout, okay, because we want to use that main layout, and then we need block content. Okay, we're going to tab over. Let's do an H1 and we'll say about us. And then let's do a paragraph. Then we're going to go on the next line and tab over. Use a pipe character. And then I'm going to paste in a bunch of, actually I can just use the lorem tab in Atom and that'll give us a bunch of sample text. Alright, and then let's copy that and we'll put another one right under it. Okay, tab that back. Okay, and that's the About page. So let's go ahead and save that. Alright, and now if we go to About, you'll see that we have our About page. Okay, we can switch back and forth. Notice the highlight in the menu is working as well. So that's that. And you can add other pages if you want, but we're going to move on to the Services page. Okay, so same thing, we're going to create under the routes a new file called services.js, and let's just copy what we have in the About. And let's see, this is going to work a little different because we want to fetch some JSON content. Alright, so let's actually create that first before we get into this. So I'm just going to create a folder in our root called JSON. Okay, and then inside there we're going to create a file called services.json. Okay, and then it's going to be very simple. We're just going to basically have an array of JSON objects with services. So I'm going to paste that in. I'll make this bigger. So we have an array. Each object has a name. So hardware repair. It has a description, which I just have some dummy text. You can put whatever you want. And then a price range, which is just a string. Okay, so we have hardware repair, virus removal, PC tune-up, and network services. So let's save that. Close that up. We'll go back to services.js. And then we're going to bring in the file system module. So let's, we'll just say var fs. And we want to require fs. Now we don't have to run npm install fs because it's again, it's like the path, it's a core module. So we don't have to install it. And then what we're going to do is go above the route and let's create a variable called results. Alright, and then we're going to take that fs module and we're going to call read file. Okay, and we're going to pass in the path to that file, which is json/services.json. Okay, next parameter is going to be, we're going to say UTF-8, that's the character set. And then the third parameter will be a callback function. Okay, and that's going to take in error and data. So we just want to check to see if there's an error. So we'll say if error, then you could do whatever you want. We'll just say throw error. All right, else, then we want to put that. We want to take that results variable that we created, and we're going to fill it. We're going to say json.parse and data. Okay. Oops. So the data is what's coming in from the file, and we're just going to run it through this json.parse function, which just obviously parses it as JSON. Alright, so now down in the route here, we want the slash because it's going to go to services, and then we want to render the services template, right? And we'll change the title. And then we just want to pass along the results as a variable. So we'll add another value here. We'll say services, and that's going to be in the results variable, okay, that we got right here. So we're passing all that data in the JSON file into our template. So let's save that. And then we're going to go back to app.js, and just like we did with the other routes, let's go ahead and copy that, and we'll say services. Routes/services, and then down here, same thing. Alright, so now we need to create our view. So under views, let's say new file, services.pug. Okay, we're going to extends layout, do our block content, tab over, do an H1, we'll say services. Alright, now with Pug we can do a loop. Okay, we want to loop through that results variable. Well, actually it's services, not results. So we can say each service, comma, I in services. Okay, now this services value, this right here, is coming from this, okay, which has the results that we fetched up here. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And then what we'll do is we're going to tab over here, and let's just do a div with the class of well. Okay, then we'll tab over, we'll put an H3, and then to grab the variables, we need to do a number sign and then some curly braces, and we can now use that service and we can call values within that service such as name. Alright, because if we look at the JSON file that we created, where is it? We have the name, so we can access name, description, and price range. Okay, where were we? So we'll have the name, and then under that let's do a paragraph, and we'll do the description, service dot description. Okay, then let's do P, and then I want some text, so I'm going to use the pipe character, and we'll say price range. So service dot price range. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that, and let's click on services, and there we go. So now we're grabbing all of these from the JSON file. Alright, now if we want, we can, if we don't want to hard code the title here, we can just put in our actual title variable like that. Okay, so we'll probably want to do that for the other ones as well. Title and our index. Oh, we don't have that on index. Alright, so now we have our home page, we have our about page, and our services page. Okay, so I think that's going to be it for this video. In the next video, we're going to work on the contact page. We're actually going to use another Node module called Node Mailer, and we're going to create our contact form. Alright guys, so in this video we're going to implement the contact form in Node.js. Okay, so we're going to use a module called Node Mailer. This is the home page and the documentation for it, and it's pretty easy to use. This is an example right here. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get this set up. So first thing we're going to do is create our form, okay, in our page. So let's go to routes, and we're going to create a new file here called contact.js. Okay, we'll copy what we have in the index, paste that in there, and let's see, we're going to do render contact, and the title will be contact. Get rid of that comment. Okay, now in app.js we're going to do the same thing we've been doing. Let's go ahead and add one of these for contact. It's going to go routes/contact. Not contact. And then down here we'll do our app.use contact and contact. Okay, so that's all set. Now let's create the view. So we'll create a new file called contact.pug. Okay, and now we're going to build out the form using Pug. So let's say extends layout. Then we're going to do our block content, tab over, let's create a form, and as far as attributes, it's going to have a method of post, and it's going to have an action of contact/send. Okay, and we'll create that route in a minute. So in the form, let's put an H1, and we'll just put the title that we pass in, which will be contact. We're going to put a class of form group, and inside that, let's tab over and put a label of name. Then we'll put an input with the class of form control. Okay, that's going to have some attributes. Let's give it a type of text. Let's give it a placeholder, and we'll just say enter name. Okay, so that's the input. Then let's do another form group. We're going to tab back. Actually, I'll just copy this one. Okay, make sure that that's at the right place right here. Okay, this one is going to be email. So input form control, let's give it a type of email. And for the placeholder, we'll just say enter email. Alright, oh, we actually need to add names to this as well. So this will be name equals name. And this will be name equals email. Okay, just like that. And then we also want a message field, so let's copy this again. Okay, make sure it's in the right spot. And let's give it a label of message. And then this is actually going to be a text area, so let's replace this with text area. Yeah, text area dot form control. It doesn't need a type because it's not an input. The name is going to be message. Okay, and then placeholder, we'll just say enter message. Okay, then we want a button. It's going to go right here, so we'll say button. Let's give it a class of btn.btn default. And let's give it a type attribute of submit. Okay, and then the text will just say submit. So hopefully this works, this Pug formatting. Let's save it. And let's go back to our template and go to contact, and there we go. We have a contact form. So that actually went pretty smooth. Some people do like this Pug templating because it is kind of clean if you look at it like this. But if you have a lot of different content, it can get kind of messy, and at least in my opinion. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to set up NodeMailer. So we first need to install it. So let's go back to our command line here and Control-C, and then we'll do Npm Install NodeMailer, and let's do --save. Okay, then we'll go and we'll run nodemon again, and now we can implement it. Now all of this is going to happen in our contact route. Alright, so let's go up at the top here, and we're going to bring in NodeMailer. Okay, and then let's see. What we're doing is in our form we're sending a post request to contact send. So that's what we need to create, is that route. Alright, so let's say router.post. Okay, so let's put a comment here, and we'll just say send email. So the post is going to go to contact/send. Okay, then we'll put our callback, and that's going to take in request, response, and next. And then what we want to do here is we need to create a reusable transporter object and include our the credentials to the email account that we want to send from. Alright, so we're going to use Gmail, and you can actually use that as a service with NodeMailer. So let me show you what I mean. So we'll say var transporter, set that to node mailer dot create transport, and then we pass in an object here, and we can say service, and we want to use Gmail, and then you want to put your auth. Okay, so the user is going to be your Gmail address. I'm going to use my traversymedia at Gmail. Okay, and then pass. Obviously, I'm not going to put that in on camera. I'll do that in a minute. But you want to put your Gmail password there. Alright, and then what we want to do is go under the transporter variable, and we want to set up the data that we want to be sent. Okay, so we're going to say var mail options. It's going to be an object. We're going to include from. Okay, so we're going to say from Brad Traversy. Obviously, you can put your own name. I'm going to go like that because we want the name and the address. So right here, I'm going to put in whatever address you used here. Okay, so that'll be the from. And then we want the to. So I'm going to send it to my support at techguywebsolutions.com. And I can check that through my Gmail as well. And you can put a list of addresses here as well if you want it to go to more than one. Okay, let's put a subject. And we'll just say hello from PC repair. That's the subject. And now we can do a text message or a text email, and we can also do an HTML formatted email. Alright, so for the text, let's say you have a submission from, alright, and then we're going to say name, and let's see, we're just going to concatenate request.body.name. That'll give us whatever is in the name field of the form. Alright, and then let's see, we want to say email. Okay, then we'll concatenate request.body.email, and then message. Message. Okay, that should do it for the text. Now I'm going to copy this and put this in the HTML. Alright, and then I'm just going to throw some HTML tags in here. So we'll put a paragraph around this part, and then let's do a UL. Okay, an LI. We'll put this name and the value in the LI, and then we'll end it. And then we'll start a new LI for the email. We'll end that. Start a new one for the message. And then at the very end here, we'll have to concatenate again and end the LI, and then we'll end the UL. Alright, so that'll put all the data in a list for us. So now we have the mail options, and now what we need to do is take that transporter object here and call .sendMail. Okay, and we're going to pass in our mail options, and then we have a callback. Okay, that callback is going to take error and info. Alright, and then what we want to do is check for the error. So if there is an error, then let's just return console.log error. Okay, if there's no error, then let's console.log, and we'll say message sent, and then we'll just pass along info.response. Alright, and then we just want to redirect, so we'll say res.redirect to the home page. Okay, and that should do it. Alright, so what I'm going to do is pause and just throw my password in there, and then we'll try it out. Alright guys, so we're going to now go to the contact form, and let's go ahead and we'll say John Doe for our name, jdoe at, let's say, Yahoo, and we'll say hello, I need a website. Okay, we'll go ahead and submit. Okay, we got redirected, and let's take a look over here. You can see it says message sent. Okay, which is a good sign. Now what I'm going to do is go to my Gmail account where I can access that support email that I used. Okay, and there it is right there. Brad Traversy, hello from PC Repair. And we have a submission from John Doe. We get the email address. Hello, I need a website. Now the question mark there shouldn't be there. Yeah, we want to get rid of that. This right here. All right. So yeah, that'll get rid of the question mark. But now we have a working contact form. All right. So I think our website is complete. It's not the best looking thing in the world, but it does work. We looked at routing. We looked at the Pug Template Engine, bringing JSON data into our template using an each loop, and building a contact form with Node Mailer. Alright, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this little project, and I will see you in the next one.